there are bigot curves in the standard of presumption that Americans, after all, admire. John Wayne, for example, could still get away if he were around today, as Clint Eastwood does, with calling them cowboys and Indians and supporting the glamour of the old Western movies. This is a truism about our society. When things go in the direction of ethics and review, somebody jumps out of the car on the crossroads and says, if you're trying to tell me that I should admire a loser, you must think you're Christ and you got to die. And it works like that. It's a gizmo in the psychology, a ghost in the machine, Arthur Carson would put it. So they come up with some wizard ideas. Like Foucault commits suicide with AIDS, and Sean Straub goes to Dakota with Chapman and an appointment from Roger Waters with John Lennon's understanding of what they were going to do. And he gives himself AIDS. And anybody who tries to out harness Her Majesty's thinking, just about better be ready to out harness the messiahs themselves, die by the crucible, and so on. This is Gizmo is the ghost in the bigot machine of Hollywood, cowboys and Indians fantasies. So it's in there, and it's always, I mean, you get work and fine tune it. So that's how they brushed off what they did to Kennedy, you know. So we get that straight now, Your Honor. We get that absolutely straight. We get through our thick skulls. Yep. Well, hybrid war, you see, is new to many police departments who don't practice it. The ones that practice it are different. UW Dialectical works with Gates in the police department. They're specialists. They bring in suitcase men from Burma. Would you believe they have a place called the Insane Prison in Burma? Woo! So, you know, I'm not talking about anybody, you know. So he's a ghost in the wind, yeah. Casper, a friendly ghost. Yeah, uh-huh. You feel his hand on your shoulder right now. Um, one of the most early hybrid war phenomenon was the Beatles' White Album after they killed Martin Luther King. Don't get the idea that Martin Luther King's family is not violence, no, it's just a racket. They should have been all over the Palestinian issue for the last 50 years, and they haven't done a thing. They give it to Cornel West to explain, you know, swastikas is ancient the African contagion is disputable under the laws of pig farm, blessing in disguise, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Because they have black intellectuals have a tendency to flip anything that the white says the opposite is true, and so they have to, you know, figure out how to work the inverse, and they end up on the side of the hardcore extremists, the John Wayne types, you know. It's not like Cornel West says, "Oh, Mr. Wayne," the way Maud and Ruth Ben Ghiat do, but it's like that, you know. We brothers are one son of a bitch to another. You get dronings from Louis Farrakhan and stuff about whatever is temperamental to them at a given day, and they do like this. I imagine I makes me think the sacred Liz Conderbuffer is their advisor, and well, he may make you twist your ankle if you don't give some credence to the spirit of that imagining of yours, and they can make evil things come true. Roger Waters has a chemistry set to tamper with his pets. Like they needed a threat from me, and for 30, 40 years they had me in homelessness. They gave me scabies. They said they took my knife and slashed at a woman. I mean, they did all sorts of bizarre things. Seattle did. Seattle Art Museum did. With Clint and Penis Gabriel, Crook Aggregusa. Because they claim that in Dodge so they can get big, big money. And finally I said, I'll make you cry. And they pounce on me, you think it's funny, queerball? Where do you see us make that poor girl wreck a car? He has a chemistry set. He's into violence, and they needed a threat because they had tortured and experimented on me. And you're the loser. You're not an American code. No, you're a loser. So I started doing some exploring of this thing. Because, Martha Gellhorn was a distinguished American. When you start hearing Mel Brooks giggles, alongside the fact that Martha Gellhorn wrote to me, something has intruded. Monty Python has taken control. And you're actually laughing at real abomination. It goes from things that are supposed to be funny, showing abomination on the screen, to actually laughing at real abomination. This is when Hollywood leaps out of your television set and the pie is in your face. It's when you start laughing in a Mel Brooks way at the mention of Martha Gellhorn. And Eleanor Roosevelt was the type of woman who would be very moved to hear that Native American women are taking the place in society, making an impact. She was one of the early pioneers of women's representation in the federal system. And of course, Martha was whom Ernest Hemingway dedicated For Whom the Bell Tolls to. Well, you get into like Paul Robeson and Eleanor Roosevelt. There was the tension of the Red Scare. They wanted to meet each other, but Eleanor backed off. And that's a very interesting problem in American intellectual culture. And of course, it can be cited to turn on liberal Americans in favor of Deutschbank, showing the great goblin of Senegal at its masthead. But I looked into the way the cinema system encircled and then snapped at JFK. Then installed the people who did it, and they brought in these gizmo guys and said, you don't dare talk about Hitler Reagan that way. But Hitler Reagan was the one who did it, is my point. He was involved in the murder of JFK. I mean, Michael Reagan can go suck an egg. That's what happened. It's the reality of the situation. And when I went back in time, I wasn't surprised, given that Oswald spent some time in Russia, that Eisenstein, the Russian filmmaker, was talking about plague and gold as simultaneous themes in the context of a autobiography when he talked about Bly Sanders, because Bly Sanders was a cinema theorist in literature who conceived of the invisible arm of the fourth dimension from Cubist psychology that was co-opted by the Italian futurists in Fiume, the counterfeiters, who introduced D.W. Griffith which is where John Ford and John Wayne got their start, to Mussolini. So it's not really all that surprising that Denunzio Luigi Freddi worked with people around DeMille, and that um, the Green Berets opens with the Marines singing in German. You would think that that would be preposterous, but that's the intellectual legacy of D.W. Griffith working with Mussolini and being, I mean, it's a matter of their cosmic history. Now, when you go back to the Wall Street crash, books about the Wall Street crash have Gandhi on the cover. I mean, Eleanor Roosevelt was born in 1884. Frederick Douglass died in 1885, and Grover Cleveland dedicated the Statue of Liberty in 1886. So 3 years later was 1889, and then 40 years later was Wall Street crash and Gandhi. So it's not like there weren't people other than just the Robinson family who remembered the Statue of Liberty and Gandhi. I mean, that's a lovely swing of the era. The Roaring Twenties from the Statue of Liberty to the Roaring Twenties. But it went through World War One, and the cinema people said, Houdini was working with Theodore Roosevelt. He was something of a spy, and they started using this idea of using disappearing men and men who looked alike, fake men, fake IDs, and counterfeiting. And Alan Dulles got this thing together and put Cecil B. DeMille in charge of fake news, which they were calling Radio Free Europe, and they fake newsed what they did to JFK. And then they super fake news what they pulled with John Lennon. And they're all over the hybrid stations. I mean, Seattle Art Museum is like poacher control money bags, and they can't shake loose from the fact that they verbalize that they are representing the victims who you sold out back to. And I should be paid for my work. I mean, it's obvious I should be paid for my work. I'm a Cub Scout type of kid. I did work hard to try to warn the community what these idiots were pulling. But when it comes to the octopus of the underground Hamas scene, that jumped out at the supernova rave that was moved into place. This is all part of the two Vlads, two virgins, pussy ball, give me some gold from the plague situation that Eisenstadt and Disney were working on together, and Trumpy, Toon, and Putin worked on together. Then you get Kim in North Korea saying, that's our president. You know what he is? He's the president of the leapfrog oligarchs. That pulled the rug from under all of us with COVID. So, and Louis Lapham is a cerebralist who thinks that he is American heritage. My name is, Harper's Magazine may be the oldest magazine in the country, but my name has been here longer as a Pilgrim family. And is he going to start tearing up Harper's Magazines for Squanto and Pocahontas and Chief Joseph? Yeah, he'll come out and say, Lois, I no longer believe in Lapham's Quarterly. I no longer believe in Harper's Magazine. Tear it up. Burn the microfilm. Get rid of it because it's a betrayal of Native American culture. And get behind Cornel West and John Wayne. Woohoo! Here come the MAGAs. He's an idiot. My father was in public schools. It's that simple. I went to a Pittsburgh public school and I was kidnapped and tortured by a gigantic pornography company. And the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pittsburgh Press and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Pittsburgh Police comment to the effect that they can't protect everybody from them. They're the ones that sat there and put this together. They used their noodles. They said credibility is the mission. We'll take Jim Curry's credibility and we'll use his tongue for our neuro-roboting. And he'll be the Pittsburgh Parrot. Pittsburgh Pirates parrot. Tired of him doing the carrot. tie it up and put it in the carrot. And they bring in Woody Allen. Woody Allen was even behind it. See? So it doesn't make sense not to pay me for my work. I'm testifying and reporting in ways that are important to protect people. Like Mackenzie Shirley is a good example of somebody. She was poisoned, and they know it. She was used in a hybrid crime, and they also know that. Okay? They used the standard technology sentencing of laced with something. It wasn't laced with something. It was formulaic and precisely calculated ingredients for neurohypnosis. She was a victim of a car bomb, and you have to get that across to the families of the victims so they can help her. Anyway, that's what this stuff about Roger Waters' pets is about, you know. She was one of his pets, and he played hanky pank with her because Queerball hadn't really all that effectively threatened anybody. He was after on his nightgown when they showed up at his house. He was actually forwarding a message that he'd written to himself as a reminder of how upset he was to someone he trusted. That's not good enough. With a slasher murdered somebody after making me void my knife. But that's not really good enough. That doesn't cover all of the witchcraft of the croquet reducer. Aha. We'll get somebody to flip their lid with neurohypnosis in a car crash. And that'll kind of buffer everything from Princess Diana to John Hines and Yonder. Because Queerball will surely get upset when he sees one of his franchise divine pieces of ass on the chopping block with the rave scene of Supernova. Surely he will get upset. And the whole point is we live in a hybrid. We need special categories of provision for victims of hybrid war in our communities if it's going to happen. We need specialists who care about the field. And we need to protect the students in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. It's in the interest of the Ohio State Board of Education to take a fact-checking mission to what happened and was done to Mackenzie Shirley. You want to call it lacing, I don't care what you call it. But the truth is the truth. The poor woman was poisoned. And it set off a seizure phenomenon. You can't. I don't want you to know. I respect your ignorance. The Dunedain said of the hobbits, as long as those poor fair people are free and at large to scorn us, I will feel happy that I have so effectively protected them, that they can live in such sweet innocence. I want you to continue to live in sweet innocence, Judge Russo. I don't want you to understand what it means to be in the grip of a neurochemical hallucinogen put together by those sadists. I don't want you to understand, but I think it would be nice for you to realize the significance of that fact in what took place in that poor woman's condition. And they had tried to do it to me. That's one of the reasons why I'm so upset, is because I understand. What I don't want you to understand, I happen to understand. It's an argument I've had with David Wecht for a long time. He says you have to teach children about the Holocaust. So they induced an extreme situation in me as a captured child. Okay? And I disagree with him. It's too much trauma to inflict on a child. Now they're doing extreme situation jazz. Gonna bomb Gaza. Because they think that that's education in the real sense of making men of people. It's a destructive tendency from the British rock stars who are fascist. It's a fascist elite. Biden, and Putin all schmooze. And the best way to get a handle on it is to talk gently and specifically at a caring age with children, not take them out and beat their brains in so that you get through the nature of reality to hardcore from Pope Carl. And you can see from the choices of the baseball players on the Pittsburgh Pirates what they're doing with Enigma studies. They think the people who cry with shame at the sight of Palestinian children being thrown out of hospitals after being terribly wounded are Nazis. Why do they think that? Because they come barking mad about the Israeli condition. They let John Shulman, who showed me Shaviti, rip off the museums and get away with house arrest because they're soft on Israeli corruption. These kinds of things add up to a brick wall in their minds. That's why some people at first mistook Roger Waters for a sensitive and caring individual and intellectual, because he would talk about the brick wall, tearing down the brick wall. People thought maybe he contributed to the end of the Berlin Wall. But, I know better now from familiarity with this fascism guzzler from, Scargill's headquarters and stuff. Like, the uglier and meaner you are, the more he likes you. I don't care for it. But the reason why people thought for a while that he might have some meaning in his spirit is because of this idea that people were building walls rather than being sensitive towards each other. And the idea that somehow there's something unmasculine about being sensitive towards each other. And so they say, oh, well, we'll castrate the queer bait for failure to date rape. Because that's what he deserves, because he's a puny little nothing. And that's their mind at work. They can't comprehend the dignity of a masculine identity that cares. It's incomprehensible to them. And as a result, they can't open up their heart to the idea that what's happening to some of the Palestinian people is what happened to some of the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. And we need to care a little better. And Martin Luther King's empire should take it on more actively and diplomatically as a movement's concerned to protect America from the tyranny of a special relationship that has gone awry, and try to put together some international consensus of a two-state society where we demonstrate our faith in each other. The only person on the block who's talking this way as the leadership position is Bobby Kennedy. I realize it's difficult arrangement that we face as a society. But he wants to get the best out of our people. And I think the people recognize that there is a subversion when we get too crooked towards each other. When we start playing a more direct, sincere, honest, open hand. We do better by each other, both here and in the international community. They say I'm not a realist. Well, I'm deaf. I've never lived above the poverty line. I've slept on the sidewalks, freezing under rubber mats. I've been rejected by girls. I have Parkinson's. If realism means that I haven't stopped the tyranny of violence in the world, so I'm a loser. I admit that I haven't had the power to do that. If realism means I have to live with terrible things that have been done to me because people despise me because of my potentials, what my potentials might have been, and they wanted to subvert it to make a theme park, then I consider myself a productive academic intellectual because I put together the sources for this idea. How Gates and Disney poached a public school student. Once they poach one public school student that conspicuously, you have to assume such gaming is addictive to them.